Hello, everyone. This is Michaela from Joy Inc., and you're listening to the End All the Things podcast. As a life coach and facilitator, I work with individuals and groups to empower their best selves to shine to the betterment of all involved. My goal is always to bring you closer to trusting the voice inside of you that is authentically yours. My job here is no different. In my journey through life, I continue to meet people who use their authenticity, their gifts, to grow, change, and serve through professional and personal endeavors. These people and their stories become my gift to you, for I cannot keep a good thing to myself, and I believe that they may inspire a part of your story to evolve. Hello, friends, and welcome back to And All the Things. Today is going to be a really exciting and engaging conversation with Linda Drosdowech of Linda Drosdowech Coaching. She is a beautiful and insightful thought leader and just great conversationalist about empowerment of you. So in this conversation, we are going to talk a lot about social media and what it means to show up, to be heard, to be seen, to take up space, and to do it with authenticity, to do it without worrying over perfection, and to do it in a way that feels right to you. Because as coaches, she and I believe that that is how you do life. Figure out what's most important to you, figure out who you want to be, and find the right way to get there. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the one and only Linda Drosdowech and All the Things. All right, Linda, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you? And tell us where you are in this great, big, beautiful world of ours.
Okay, I will tell you how I am. How I am is I feel a little discombobulated because my one daughter is flying from Denver to Calgary right now, and my oldest sister just left and is flying Winnipeg, where I live, to Miami. So
Wow.
and my youngest daughter just took the car to drive to work. So I feel like a little bit like there's movement all around me, and I'm trying to keep track of where everyone is.
Mm-hmm. And
Keep
it's
track of my
interesting,
people.
right? Like we love these people and we're responsible for them, but we're not. We have to let them go out into the world, but it doesn't mean it's easy to adjust when there's that kind of space and change. So thank you so much for being vulnerable about that. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
And I love from one coach to another, I love when we get to speak our truth. And I hope we do it often, but and say that this is what I'm experiencing and it feels funny, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, because 9 out of 10 times there's some part of that that other people are also experiencing. So we're here. Oh, and so you mentioned you're in Canada.
Yes,
Um,
I'm in Winnipeg, Canada.
I love that. Have you always lived in Canada?
Yes, I have. I grew up in the prairies, and then I moved to the West Coast for a long time, and then I moved back to the prairies when my daughters were young, and so they could grow up with their grandparents and their cousins and their aunts and uncles.
That
When
matters.
you're a prairie girl, your roots run really deep. So
Right.
I know that's true for a lot of people who I knew grew up here, moved away, and then the draw to come back is pretty strong at certain points. So I just was having coffee with a friend of mine, and we were reminiscing about Vancouver days, and I was remembering how beautiful it is out there. And we both had a moment's pause of, how did we end up back here in the prairies? But we did, and I'm a bloom where you're planted kind of person.
I
So
love it.
I appreciate this part of the world. Um, Listen, I appreciate living in Canada. It's a beautiful country. It's generally fairly safe, fairly prosperous. Um, I think I feel very lucky to have grown up here and still be
Wonderful.
here.
And I appreciate that because like as an American, I don't know those different geographical sections, like the prairie and the West. I just know Canada. But of
Right.
course, we have the South and, the Southwest, like all of our different geographical parts that can define us, right? And where we are can really be an impact of that. So being a prairie person and a bloom where you are person, let's talk about where you are right now inside homegrown feelings. So we're going to do a quick lightning round, and this
Oh, I
lightning
love
round is, yep, and this is one that I use with the people I work with. I use it as often as possible because there's so much meat that we can expose here. So
it. Okay, let's do it.
in this moment, without judgment, and friends, we can all change our mind in 5 minutes. But in this moment, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? I'm going to say what makes me happy, and it's an unusual response in many ways because solitude makes me happy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not something that we talk about a lot. We're a very uh, we rely on our communities and our interpersonal relationships, and I value those very highly. And I'm very much a person grounded in family, grounded in, family traditions. But I need and desire a tremendous amount of solitude in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I need it for deep thinking. I'm a coach. I work with entrepreneurs. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. I'm very, I do a ton of networking. I do podcasts. I'm very public facing, and it takes a certain amount of energy to be public facing and to show up as a leader and a thought leader and put your ideas out in the world. You and I are going to talk about marketing later and the challenges that come with putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And I think for me, in order to do that, I need that solitude. I need that uninterrupted, glorious time on your own where you're just in your own head, or I'm writing my journal, or I'm walking my dog. I don't consider my dog company. My
Because
dog
their
is,
expectations are so simple, right? Like they don't expect much. They don't, and they just are so unconditional. So I completely appreciate that. It's good
that's
energy.
great. So
I
solitude for
love
me
that.
means having an animal at my side. So
I
yeah,
really
solitude.
appreciate that. And I love that you started with it's not the most common, but I think it's one of the most important, right?
Yeah,
To be aware of what you need, and to know how to take that so you have the energy and the full cup to go do all those beautiful things that you're serving to the world. And I love also, because this was going to be part of one of my questions in one of the conversations or one of the responses that we shared, you say, I'm fiercely independent, but love solitude, and I'm passionate about building community, right? And to look at those in isolation, it's almost like jumbo shrimp or an oxymoron, but it also makes great sense, right? To be
really
able to
does.
be fiercely independent, we have to be quiet enough to know where we want to go, right? And
Yes,
and to be able to build a community, to speak, to write, to present, to coach, you have to have enough energy and enough clarity. And I think solitude is highly underrated,
I do
really,
too.
really underrated. And that was one of my takeaways with COVID was like, I kind of like solitude. Maybe
Yes.
not in that extraordinary way. Let's, buffer it with that. But I like having that quiet time, right?
Yes. And the
So I,
clarity, I like the word that you said, clarity. For me, solitude is having time to be aware of my thoughts. And
mhm,
as a coach, how important being aware of our thought patterns and what they bring up for us and
yeah,
the feelings and the actions we take from those thought patterns.
yeah,
And for me, having that quiet time, I'm able to notice my brain
hmm
and notice the thoughts and listen. I am usually very open in, my marketing and my emails and how I
Yeah.
communicate. The thoughts that I have in my head, just because I'm a coach, does not mean that at times they're not just like so unhelpful and full of doubt and, you know, uh, indulging in stories and drama. And for me, to be able to have the quiet time to see those thoughts
Right.
and then be able to either write them or speak them so that somebody else can recognize them and somebody else can go, oh, wait, that's how my brain works too. I hadn't really been able to articulate it
Right.
or see the pattern. And so for me,
Mm.
it's a necessity, when you're a writer and a speaker, to be able to have that I like your word, clarity on
Mhm.
what's actually going on in my brain, and then how am I showing up in the world because
Mhm.
of those thoughts that
Right.
are spiraling in my brain.
I love that. I love that. And that was a beautifully not fast lightning round answer. So thank you. Let's go real quick to the next one. What makes you sad?
What makes me sad? I'm
Mhm.
gonna go with the first thing that comes to mind. And I love that we're going to relate to this last last bit about solitude. What makes me sad is that feeling of disconnection from a person that you're with. So
Mhm.
we can be with people all day long and feel like we're missing that connection, right?
Mhm.
It feels superficial, or it feels
Surface level. Yeah,
surface
like
level. It feels like you're not being seen for who
mhm.
you are. There's like an expectation on you, and it's I don't know if it would make me feel sad, but it is a
Like
def
disappointing or
yeah, definitely a feeling of wishing it was different,
Mhm.
being aware of the disconnection. And I think, as somebody who values both solitude and community, when I am with people, generally I do like to go deep.
Mhm. Yeah. Go
I
beyond that skin deep superficial stuff.
Right? I find,
Mhm.
I'm also an introverted person, and I've read this before. There's a great book, Quiet by Susan Cain.
So
Wonderful.
good.
Yeah,
So
right?
good.
So
Yep.
good. And I remember reading her saying for introverts, staying at a superficial level of conversation is exhausting. I can't, she probably went into the description of what is happening in the brain. I never remember
Right.
those actual technical things, but I remember the experience of it. It does feel tiring. It's
Fatiguing, absolutely.
right.
Well, it's an energy drain, right?
Yeah,
When your brain is so capable of harnessing more about the mind, body, and the spirit, and all we're talking about is like the minutia,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
fatiguing because for me, my brain just keeps spinning and going, but we could really be having a real conversation.
Yes.
And it's like holding that back and we don't want to hold that back. And I have a couple more of those lightning round questions, but I want to transition this because I think it's a great space to this is where this all of my podcasts are very philanthropic and I want to give away the goods, but also beneficial to myself because I have things I'm working through. I have places I want to go and grow. And one of those places that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago was social media and putting myself out there and putting ourselves in spaces that are new and unfamiliar. And you say on your website, it's time to be seen, to be heard, and to take up space. And that
Hmm.
resonated with me because that's my selfish reason for wanting to have this conversation with you to affirm that. But can you tell us, please, the importance of that quote and what that means to you and to how you participate in your engagements?
Absolutely. Um, well, I'll start with the last phrase, which is to take up space. And as women in our culture, we from a very early age are told
Mhm.
to not take up space.
Mhm.
And this to me is we're very not just a metaphorical don't take up space, but an actual physical, you are supposed to, your one job as a woman is to be thin, is to be small, right? That is our ideal. It is what we are told from a very young age will attract a partner, which will mean success, which will mean you're living life right if you shrink yourself, right? It's all
Mhm.
about shrinking your actual physical body. And at a certain point in my life, I mean, I bought into that whole thing. I 100% was very much in the diet culture world of believing my value was in being small, in being thin,
Some version of perfect, right?
some
Like
version of
some,
perfect, right?
yep.
And for me, unpacking that and looking at all the messages and how that impacts our ability to be seen. Because if we don't fit this ideal that we've been sold, we do hide. We do,
Right.
if you don't feel like you're thin enough or pretty enough or young enough or
Yeah.
able-bodied enough, or uh, if we don't fit this ideal, even in our culture, in North American culture, there's a value placed on white skin over dark
Mhm.
skin. If you don't align with that image, um, with that perfect image, I'm glad you said that. Um, we do hide. And I would
Mhm.
say even people who do align with that ideal, they're still hiding
Right.
because the fear of judgment is so strong.
It
And
is.
I talk to so many clients who have incredible gifts and visions for their business to offer the world. They are
Yep.
so talented. They have such amazing messages, skills and talents that the world needs, right? Visions for a wonderful offering.
Yep.
And yet, to go on social media to state who they are, to put
Yep.
a photo of themselves or a video of themselves, to be vulnerable, to open yourself up, to say, this is my opinion, and
Mhm.
then knowing that other people could disagree with you,
Yep.
it's extremely hard. And when I'm working with my clients, I I like to, you and I are both coaches, so we work with the thought work and we work with feelings and goal setting and taking actions. But I always remind my clients that this isn't just a fear that's in their head. Like this is a real fear. You could put something on social media
Mhm.
and you could receive backlash and
That's right.
criticism and judgment and horrible comments about the things that you feel so personally vulnerable for,
Mhm.
right? Your appearance or
It
your
is possible.
parenting, right?
Yep.
Or your politics. And so it's not just a made up fear that you need to work through. I
Right.
think there's space to acknowledge that yes, it is a very challenging space to be in, especially to be real and to try and offer up an authentic version of
Yep.
yourself. It is challenging. So
But this
I
is where we have to choose our hard, right? Staying
yes,
the same and staying small is hard, right? We just said it's tiring to stay in that superficial, not real level. That's hard. Change, going out and putting yourself out into the world is also hard. but we have to stop and look at what's the desired result. If you want to stay the same, great, suffer with your hard. I will help you figure out a way through it. That's great. But if you want to change, that's also going to be a challenge, right? But on the other side of it is your authenticity and is your fullness.
Hey, hey there, amazing listeners of And All the Things. Thank you for being on this journey with me. The fact that you're still here, I have to assume this podcast has sparked your curiosity, encouraging you to think of life beyond your current boundaries. Now it's time to take that energy and channel it into a transformative journey where boundless joy awaits. Introducing the Course for Joy, brought to you by Joy Enterprises and me, Michaela, your joy coach. Life gets busy, I get it, but self-care matters and should not take a back seat. That is why we've crafted a 4-week self-guided adventure to seamlessly fit into your routine. In just 15 minutes, a few times each week, our enlightening video lessons and engaging workbooks will guide you through self-discovery and bring you closer to growth. As a special bonus, when you enroll in the Course for Joy, you'll receive an exclusive 50-minute live coaching session. We'll celebrate your progress and create a roadmap for your journey ahead. Are you ready to paint your life with vibrant joy and purpose? Visit myjoycoach.com/course to learn more about the transformative Course for Joy. Let's amplify your joy and ignite your purpose together. Stay tuned for more inspiration and insights right here on And All the Things.
So let me ask you a question about authenticity as it pertains to social media. You have posted, of course, I went and scoured your social media just to kind of, get prepped for our chat. But you made a post and I loved it because it's something that rings in my head. And I say to people, but you will be too much for some people. And these are not your people.
Right.
Talk to us about that when it comes to defining, creating, owning a presence of our own on social media.
Absolutely. So, I think I see this when people start their business. There's a lot of still people pleasing, right? You want to appeal to everyone, right? You don't want to piss anyone off. You don't want to, hurt anyone's feelings. You don't want to leave anyone out. Women, we're so kind generally, I'll speak generally, but we're so kind and compassionate. We don't want to leave anyone out, right? So I want to create this business that serves absolutely everyone in the whole world, right? So everyone's going to get help by me, which is a wonderful thought. But usually when that happens, you end up putting content out that is very bland, vanilla.
Right.
There's
diluted.
there's no real
diluted.
bite to it, or so people, they might read your stuff and feel, oh, that's fun, or they feel a little good, but they don't get that moment of recognition, oh, wow, she put that out there. She's, I see that in myself. And wait, she's saying how she transformed. Maybe it's possible for me, even given that, whatever problem or challenge you're facing. I think by being authentic, it's more like, can you be specific? Can you talk about something in detail so that your ideal client can recognize themselves and see, oh, okay, that's me. That's also me. And I think that's the gift of authenticity, is allowing other people to recognize themselves, and allowing other people to also recognize, well, that's not me.
Yes.
And they scroll on, or they unsubscribe from your email list. And I always think that that's a win when you can get, if I get an unsubscribe on my email list, I always think I must have done something right. I must have been so clear about who I help, how I help.
I love that.
That
I love that perspective twist. I love that.
Absolutely, that people on my list go, oh, well, that's not for me.
Mhm.
Because when somebody's doing that, that also means somebody else on that list is going, leaning in and going, oh, okay, she
I
is
love
for
that.
me. She can help me. She's been where I've been. She knows how to help my particular problem. So to me,
Hmm.
authenticity is being specific.
Hmm. I think that's great. And I think that having that perspective, getting people to help you see, all right, so I'm not for that person, I'm not for this person, but I am for this person. I like how you said letting them see themselves in you, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you do with the entrepreneur who is like, I don't need to be authentic because my product is just great. Just go for it. Do you ever get that? Or how do you manage? Like, because I can see some entrepreneurs, I have worked with some entrepreneurs who are like, I don't really want to get into who I am and how I feel and what's really me. I just want my product to speak for itself. Right.
Depends on the product,
Hmm.
right? So you and I are coaches and we're selling coaching. For me, if I'm selling a service-based business, product like that, I I think you do need to let people in and
Hmm.
see behind the curtain because people buy coaching um, based on pure personality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they need to know, that person can help me. They've got knowledge. I respect their, their process, the results they're promising. But you can have two coaches, two business coaches who work with entrepreneurs who offer the same kind of package, a 6-month
Hmm.
package, who who's drawn to you is really based on how you show up in the world and how you how you present yourself. So
Hmm.
I do think in that sense that if you're an entrepreneur that's selling something that is like coaching where it's very personal, I think you do need to give people a little bit of the know, like, and trust factor so that they feel safe to buy. But I also think I was having a conversation yesterday with we weren't talking about social media, we were talking about email marketing, but same thing. Like I write emails and I often just put the same kind of content on social media, so it's the same kind of content. And for me, when I'm writing to my audience, number one, I'm writing to the person who is ready to buy. I
Right.
don't write to the haters. I don't write to people who think, "Oh my God, coaching's a joke." Like I would not, if I write in that
Yeah.
headspace, I'm in the headspace of trying to convince people coaching is
Hmm.
great and working with me would be wonderful. I get in a convincing energy. When I write social media or I'm writing email, I'm writing to the people I know who are already
Yeah.
interested, who may just need to hear it in a slightly different way. May need to hear another story from me of transformation, or they may need to just even have a couple of tips that are
Yeah.
useful for them. They're like, oh, that worked. What else? What else does she have? So
Hmm.
to me, I often think of who I'm writing to, who needs to hear this, and now I've even lost the thread of the question that you asked because I went in a different direction. I'm like, where did we
No,
start?
but I was asking about like getting entrepreneurs, someone who's either got the product or the service base, but getting them into the idea of authenticity. And in order for, I want to give our listeners some tips and tricks on how to get that language, how to speak to the right people. So
Oh,
you were hitting the
okay,
nail on the head. You were getting all
okay,
of it right there.
okay. Because the one point I wanted to make then was um, thinking of that entrepreneur, right? And
Yeah.
they are um, here's what I think. Whether you're writing a social media post or an email to your audience, it is important that you know who you're writing to, But I also believe that as we are writing that content or that copy, that we are also developing our self-concept so that we are getting deep into what our client's problem is, how we solve that problem, how our process works, and what the results that we're promising them are. And the more we do it, the more clear we are ourselves, the more we believe, wow, I really can help people. Like so it's a conversation that you're having with your audience, but it is developing your self-concept.
Yeah.
So I am somebody, and this is a personal opinion, not everyone shares this, but I'm okay with that. Unsubscribe. But I don't believe that you're going to get as much benefit from social media marketing if you view it as a task that is like, I just need to get this thing off my to-do list. I'm going to hire someone to create 7 posts a week. It sounds great, but I think you have to keep in mind that the end goal is not to have posts on social media. The end goal is to sign clients and help people.
Right.
So it can, I've seen people doing social media marketing where it looks wonderful, it's branded, it's beautiful, but it doesn't compel people to buy. So I think when you're really wanting to compel people to buy, I think I believe, people can set up all sorts of different things. You can do reels, you can do stories, you can do posts, you can do bullet points, or you can tell stories. That is, your personal style. And I'm all about like creating your personal style, but I think to sell anything, you have to truly believe in what you're offering.
Right. And whether it's coaching or a product, you have to know truly what the value is, what the pain
Yes.
points are, what the competition is, so that you can narrow down who you're speaking to. I mean, I've seen so many products come to market with like outlandish marketing, but they're targeting the actual absolute right person, right?
Yeah.
So it might not be me, but that's okay. I'm entertained or curious. But I really appreciate how you talked about like, we can't see it as a job,
Yeah.
right? Yes. I mean, for some people, social media is a job. But for me, the entrepreneur, I can't see it as part of my resistance for a long time was I don't want to pre-populate 5 posts a week and have that. I want it to be me. I want it to be authentic, not just packaged up and sent out. Now I know there's value and efficiency in all of that. So I do it, but I had to learn how to be social on social media and not just be on social media. And that comes from a quote I have recently heard, but I really liked it because for me, it took out the checklist. The Michaela has to do these 5 things every week, and I have to, da, 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 da. And there's great value in that. I've taken the class, like I understand it, but I'm trying to figure out where my flow is, right? Where do I start and the social media part start and stop? And so I look at it and say, I can't look at it as a job. I have to look at it really as what am I feeling socially? What does the world need? What do my people need? What do I need? It's one of the reasons I do this podcast, so I can learn with other people.
That is so good. I want to just, as you're saying that, this is what I've seen many entrepreneurs do, right? You start your business, which is freedom, right? You get to make up the rules, you get to decide your offer, you get to decide everything about your business.
For better or worse, right?
For
Like
better or
it's
worse.
all in there, but it's our choice.
And then we don't grow up with the entrepreneurial spirit in schools, right? We are taught how to do things according to what the teacher says, right? What's going to be on the test. What do I need to write in the essay that's going to get me the A? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. So that's the mind frame that we go into life. And then you are drawn into entrepreneurship, and it's wonderful, it's freeing. But I think at the beginning, a lot of us look for somebody else to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is we use social media rules as a way to tell us what to do. So you start your business, you want clients, and you're like, oh, I got to be on social media. And then immediately, most of us dive in and sign up for like 10 workshops on all the rules of social media. Show up at this time and show up this way. And those rules become our boss. We start working for social media and we stop working for ourselves and creating, as you said, the flow, the the actual connection, the social part of meeting and connecting with a real person. We lose that in favor of putting a very restrictive, you have to show up 5 days a week and you have to do it in this way, and you have to, it's almost like that.
It's exhausting.
It is
Let's be real.
exhausting. And it's also not effective. Right? It's not. You're not really reaching people. And it's almost a it can become a way, even though you and I are talking about the vulnerability of showing up on social media, I think in some ways when we place those rules of how we have to show up, it removes a little bit of the vulnerability. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna create a post and I'll put an offer at the end, go to the link in my bio to book a consult call. And we feel like we've done some work and we feel productive, but we actually haven't taken the vulnerable step of talking face to face to a person or on a Zoom call and saying, here's my offer. Would you like to sign up with me? And then have to deal with the rejection and fear of failure and all that. So I think social media can go both ways in that sense. It can be really hard to show up, but then it can also become a bit of a way to hide.
So for some, it might be, I don't want to put the post up with my call to action and my compelling offer, because then I actually have to make the offer. And that's even scarier, right? Is that what you're saying? Like the one blocks the other fear. So maybe we're not afraid of social media. Maybe it's the confidence to convert to a sale, right?
Yes. I think it can be both. I think you can be afraid of social media and then also afraid of
being successful. Like if your social media platform actually works and now you have clients, now it's like, oh gosh, and I think for me, that's one of the parts that has been a mental conflict, right? Because I am confident in the work that I do, and I love being able to tell people about the work that I do. Yes, I've had to deal with some money mindset issues, right? But when I jumped into social media big time, if not even big time, but like when I actually put my foot in the water, not just put up some posts here and there, was starting this podcast. And I wanted to take up space, but I was, to the question we started with, I was playing it small, right?
Yeah.
I coached people to go be big, but I always believed that my spotlight was for other people, right? Like I'm here to serve and highlight others. So I twisted it and I said, okay, if that's my belief, then let's do it. Let's take up space. I'll bring a friend. I'll bring someone with me. We'll stand in the spotlight together. And I started doing Instagram live podcasts, whatever. That's how it started. But I wasn't alone. I had someone I know, love, and trust who walk with me and help me walk through the fire, if you will. And what I realized is that really nothing happened. People watched it, people listened, we had some comments, but nothing negative happened. Nothing fell out of the sky. I didn't get hatergrams. Like, it was fine. So the next time I showed up, I was like, I can do this. right? And that little experience of trying, right? Putting yourself out there and trying was really important to me in this journey that I'm on. In that space, one of the things I have also been working on my personal journey was my self conversation with perfection, right?
Yeah.
I was awesome. I was perfect at a lot of perfect air quotes, friends who are listening, at a lot of things, right? I acted like I had it all together. And my fear was that if I wasn't perfect on social media, right, that there would be again this backlash or that I wouldn't be enough. And as I worked through that, I realized you don't actually have to be perfect on social media to get traction and to get attention. So as I let go my perfection complex in my real life, I've been shedding back some of that in this bigger outward social media land. So what conversations do you have about the word perfect or being perfect or typing perfectly or whatever, for the people that you work with as it relates to marketing and social media? Because I like how we're tying in email marketing and all the aspects.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, the perfect. Yeah. What is it's it shows up in so many different ways, the messaging around being perfect. And I I was just we were speaking about email marketing. I was writing yesterday a post about a conversation I was having with a group of entrepreneurs about email marketing. And for me, because I, like you, have dealt with perfectionism, I have a way of writing emails that is a way for me to um, get around the perfectionism that I've struggled with. So I set a timer. I'm big on a timer. I use timers for a lot of
Same.
different things, especially writing. So I would set a timer for 30 minutes to write an email. Within that 30 minutes, because I'm a writer and I've written for years, I know I'm a good writer, so I don't have to worry too much about grammar and all that.
Mhm.
I trust that that will come, but I also trust that an idea will come. I will sometimes sit down at the computer and have zero idea of what I'm going to write. And I'll be like, oh, I'm scheduling this for tomorrow at 6 in the morning. So something's got to come. But I've done it long enough that I know if I sit down, put my hand on the keyboards and like go, okay, brain, like something, give me something will come if I just start getting words on the page,
Well, that
right?
comes back to your solitude, your solitude making you happy, right? When we think we have to know the answer, right? Like going back to the school conversation, how does it go? The first kid with their hand up gets the gold star, right?
Yeah.
We applaud people who are fast and ready all the time. The reference to Susan Cain's Quiet. We don't have to be fast and loud to have quality creative inspirations. But in the world we live in, it's so busy and there's so much noise that when we sit down to the computer to do that, it's binging, it's things are going. And so I love that you're saying just start with a clean mind,
Start with a
right?
clean mind
And quiet the
and
noise and trust yourself.
trust yourself. Trust that I often remind myself, if at that moment what I'm going through is my mind is a blank, I cannot think of anything helpful. My thought is, I bet you there's other entrepreneurs who feel exactly the same way at this moment. I'll write an email about having no ideas and what to do when you have no ideas. And boom, suddenly there's an email
I
with
love that.
value and authenticity and an ability to, to be quiet enough to recognize, yeah, there's the thought pattern. I've got nothing to say. No one needs to hear this. I've already said this before. This isn't valuable enough. Just to have that recognition that's going through my brain. If I can get that onto the page and somebody else reads it, they're like, oh gosh, okay, I'm not alone.
Well, and I mean, I just had this like thought inspiration when you said, like, I've already said this. Well, I spend a lot of my life telling my children the same thing over and over again.
It's so
I
true.
am willing to do that. Then maybe, and again, this is my thought experience here, but maybe I should be more willing to say the same things over and over again about joy and boundaries and trust and the divine gift within, because I do get into that. I'm like, oh, I said that last month,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But it is the same, right? And I'll tell it with a different spin or a different story, or maybe I'll just redo it again. But to go back another moment, that's almost being afraid to take up space. I've already said that, I can't say it again,
Can't say it
right?
again.
And we get
What if I'm
small.
annoying people, right?
Yeah.
What if they're like, oh, here she goes again on the
Oh,
joy.
yes. Oh, Michaela with
Enough
her
with the
joy.
joy, Michaela.
Woo! And honestly, that's so funny because like that's one of the voices in my head that has played before because where do we start and where do we stop? And but then I go, well, those aren't my people.
Those
I
aren't
want
my
to speak for me and my business. I want to speak to the people who are looking for joy, who know it's right
absolute.
there in front of them, but don't know how to or have the courage or the willingness to take up that space and own it.
And
So
if you
I
think of the
appreciate that.
people, if you think of the people on social media that you follow that you love,
Yeah.
right? They're saying the same stuff in different ways over and over and over again, and we love
Yeah.
it. It's like, oh, there's my favorite guy. You watch
Yeah.
it, you're like, I know what to expect. Perfect.
Yeah.
So for me, that knowledge is what you know, we hear all the time in social media marketing, you have to be consistent,
Mhm.
right? So, which I think is a word that so many people use against themselves. They're like, oh, I said I'd be consistent, show up 3 times this week and I didn't, and I'm never going to succeed now. For me, consistency is not the amount of times you show up, it's that you are consistently talking over and
Mhm.
over again in your voice, in your style, about your
Right.
messaging, about what you value. That's the consistency that
Right.
people want. Then they're like, I know, here's my daily dose of joy. I can count
Yeah.
on Kayla. Oh, here she is. What's she going to talk about today? Oh,
Mhm.
that affirms what she already said. You go away feeling that safety to buy.
Right.
That to me is the consistency that we're after.
And that's such an important differentiation, right? There are so many metrics in our lives that help determine success, again, air quotes, quality. And when we talk about consistency in social media, my brain assumes by design or by default that we are talking about, are you showing up 3 to 5 times in your feed and in your stories and da 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 da. But to shift the metric of why, what are you really trying to measure? And I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
How consistent are you, am I, in being my authentic self and delivering my service and my message time and time again, even if it's every 3 days, 5 days, whatever.
And it goes
Um,
back to our perfectionism
yes.
conversation, right?
Yep.
The perfectionist is like 3 times a week is when that's what you got to do to be perfect on social media.
Yep.
So if I don't do it, I'm failing and I'm not getting
Yep.
clients. Yeah, I think we need to do a better job of communicating that it isn't that is just another way of setting yourself up to fail,
Right.
right? Do
Because
what
if
you
I can't do it 3 times a week, I'm just not going to do it at all. And then we get into this like analysis paralysis, fear of failure to launch kind of thing.
all
You
or
know,
nothing thinking, right? Yeah.
so how do we then, says an independent woman who also likes her solitude but wants to build a community, how do we bring in mentorship and partnerships into our presence in the internet, social media land? What are some best practices on collaboration and helping to build partnerships in our community?
I love this question. It is community is a big part of my life, and even though we're talking about social media and online, I'm gonna tell a story about. Oh, I hear my Canadian when I use the word
I
about.
love it. I just smiled real big. If we didn't know where she was from before, now we
We do
know.
now. um, so last year, I two things happened. So last year around October, I was feeling really blah in my business. I was just at a point where it was like, just feels stagnant. I didn't feel like I was connecting. I was, I work always online, so I was missing that in-person connection.
It's isolating
It
sometimes,
is
right?
isolating at times. So what I did, two things. One was I decided that I would just invite my local entrepreneur friends
Mhm.
to have coffee between 12, no, what, 10:30 and 12 Friday mornings at this one spot, this central location, beautiful open space, lots of room. And I just started to put the word out there because
Amazing.
of my need. I was like, I want to be in person talking to people, going, oh, I love your earrings, and,
Mhm.
just what's going on in your business. And
Yeah.
I wanted that in-person connection. So to do that, I had to take the risk. The risk was I had to invite people, which, as an entrepreneur, an invitation is just, we do that all the time. An invitation to work with me, it's an offer. So I had to put the invitation out and say, hey, I'm meeting here. Here's my promise. I will show up at the same time. So it's, I'll always be there, but just come and chat and hang out. So I had to go through the discomfort of inviting people,
Yep.
knowing that I could get rejected. I had to show up the first time and sit by myself with my
Right.
tea, going, nobody wants to play with me, and feeling very awkward and
Mhm.
self-conscious. And then thankfully, one friend showed up at like the last half an hour, and I'm like, oh, thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
And allowing myself that vulnerability to feel like, awkward and uncomfortable, and to say out loud, I need people.
It's so
voice,
powerful.
to voice what we want and
Mhm.
need is also to admit I don't have that, right? So that's scary feeling. Um, and then to sit and be open to people not showing up. To me, it was a very powerful moment because I think it models the business journey. We care so deeply about what our offer is. We want to serve people, we want to make sales. We have to be willing to take those first steps, to hear no, to put ourselves out there and feel exposed,
Mhm.
and like everyone's going, well, she looks like lonely over there. To go through that kind of feeling of being exposed. And listen, it was the best thing. It just started to
Mhm.
grow. People would bring friends, collaborations happened. I
Mhm.
would say, like, I think the biggest group that showed up one time, there was 13 of us. And I just sat back and just watched people going, oh, what's your email? We should get together. We should plan this next event together. To see the collaborations happening was so gratifying. And uh I really, so I took the summer off from doing that, but I'm going to start that up again in the fall.
That is
And then
awesome.
it was so fun.
Be-
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
we have to, going back, like we have to choose our hard. Staying the same for you would have been hard,
Yeah,
right? And and that would have been fine, but it would have only been fine. That's where it would have capped out at. But having the courage to say, I have needs and I have gifts, right? I will bring my beautiful presence and show up. All I ask is that you come and be with me. That is highly vulnerable, but
yeah.
it's also, again, the world didn't shatter, things didn't come to an end, but it's when the reward, the potential payoff is worth the hard, right? For you, it was, I'm willing to put myself out there so that I can have what I need. And I know that so clearly. I've got the clarity for it and I'm willing, right? And in the work I do, it's you got to try. You got to do the one thing and then be willing to show up again and try until you find the way that fills that cup. right?
That's right. Yeah, and it is taking a risk.
Yeah, because we're
But then
not
I'm
here
also
to be
a writer,
alone.
so I'm, as I'm I'm experiencing these things and the discomfort and the growth, I'm also writing emails about it. Like I'm also going telling my audience, okay, I sat there by myself and this is how I felt. And this was, this was the experience and this is what this was the hurdle I had to get over. This was what was going on in my head,
Mhm,
but this was the result I also got. So I'm,
mhm.
like most coaches or writers or speakers, we're mining our personal experience for material to share with others so that they
Yeah,
can recognize themselves
I
and
love
get
it.
the help they need.
I love that. I
It's
love that. So one of my I mean, I have a million questions, but I'm going to respect your time and try to whittle it down. But one of the things that I know is really important to you is the women's empowerment piece of the work that you do. I think the way that you live and who you are. And I very much share that, right? We met each other through our women's empowerment group, Big. So one of the things I was thinking, and I saw that you had shared the quote, one of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg quotes about women belong in all the places that decisions are being made, right? And I look at over the past, let's say 5 years, where all these movements have come through culturally. How do you see social media? Because social media gets a lot of negative, right? Like there's a lot of the backlash towards it. But do you see social media as a positive force for getting women into positions where decisions are being made?
I think
And
my
I hope
take.
that's not a leading question. Please answer it in any frame you wish, but how do you
Okay,
see that?
okay. The way I think of social media, and I invite anyone to think of it this way, it is my own personal publishing company. You know, for years we grow up with the publishing company has changed so much in the last 20, 30 years.
Sure.
But most of us grew up with it, the our words were there were gatekeepers to having our words and ideas out there. The
Mhm.
publishing companies were generally run mostly by men at the top. There might be women editors, but at the
Right.
top, the
The
decision makers
decision makers.
were
Yeah.
men, right? And so they chose who was being read, who was, what words were being put out
Mhm.
there into the bookstores. And the revolution that has happened with social media, I think is brilliant because no one is gatekeeping you anymore. If
Right.
you have an idea you want to share, or an event, or something empowering, or a story to tell that needs ears and eyes on it, you have access in this very second to show up and be seen and take up space. And to me, that's an incredibly powerful feeling. And I think if we looked at it in that way more, rather than look at it as, there's obviously tremendous amounts of negatives that come up with it as well, but there are also tremendous amounts of positives.
Mhm.
And there have been revolutions in the past 5 years that really took off just because of social media. And
100%.
so for me right now, I think if people view social media as their own personal publishing company, and you get to say
Yes.
what you want, you know,
That's right.
it's
And I mean, I encourage people to do so with integrity, but that you get to be you
yeah,
and to pull in all the threads of this conversation. And that's kind of where I was hoping we would go with this because I see it like hashtag me too had so
yeah,
much momentum because we weren't censored by the media, the bigger, that cloud of media. We are able to say, I like this, I don't like this, and to take us from a place where being small is, quote, again, perfect. Now we have, the body positivity and all just so many different spaces where I get to show up as me. So if I'm going to use this conversation as one of my own, personal coaching sessions to help me grow beyond where I am with social media, I think that makes me feel like I have a responsibility, right?
Yeah.
I have this publishing company created by me for me to create my word, to take up my space. And if I'm not doing it, nobody else is going to be sharing my word, right? Or potentially. But I like the idea of if I'm not showing up as me, I might as well not even show up because there's plenty of other fakers out there. But I have a responsibility to share my word, to share my gift, and take it or leave it. You may or may not be my people, but I'm not showing up for that. I'm showing up to do what I feel is right. And to me, that takes away some of that cringy, what if they don't like it? What if it's too much? What if it sounds repetitive? It makes me feel like I have a responsibility,
Right.
and not a burdensome one. There are some probably conversations that feel like a burden, but it's inspiring to think about it in that way of how close can I get to hitting the nail on the head for the people who need to hear it? Because only I can deliver exactly what they need in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really like that. It's an invitation, not a job or a checklist of 3 to 5 times per week. And I appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah. And I
Ooh.
do think of it that way. And it does give the, yeah, it puts you back in the CEO of your own business, right? You are
Mm-hmm.
in charge. You get to choose what you want to say, what you don't want to say, but it's not being dictated from some outside source about how often you have to show up and what you need to say and how you need to look. No, you get to make those decisions yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that um, I know when I see other people doing that on social media, I am inspired.
Mm-hmm.
I do take that. I see people taking risks and being vulnerable in ways that I could not have imagined people doing 20 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
to see it, you mentioned the body positivity. I think that's brilliant. I love seeing it all. And so yeah, I I'm yeah, I find it powerful, and yet at the same time I also recognize how challenging it is at first.
Mm-hmm.
But it
Yep.
does get easier. You and I both know that that first moment when you show
Yep.
up, it does feel like the world is going to cave in and all
Oh.
eyes are on you. And
Mhm,
it does feel like that. So
mhm.
if you are feeling like that, normal, like
Congratulations, you're normal. More air
congratulations,
quotes.
you're taking a risk.
Yes.
And soothe your nervous system in whatever way you can, because your nervous system is going to go on high alert. You are going to feel that rush of adrenaline. You're going to feel, all the things. Soothe your nervous system, but at the same time, don't wait until you feel perfectly calm and centered and grounded,
Yep.
because that
That
moment,
may never happen.
it may
Not in
never
times
happen.
of stress.
Do it
Ah,
even when you feel that shaky, nervous, I'm
mhm,
going to throw up kind of feeling, right?
mhm.
Do it even then, and then it'll get easier. And then you'll reach
Yeah.
the next level of something you want to try, and you're going to feel that all over again.
Yes.
But this time you'll recognize it. This time you'll be able to say, "Oh wait, that's what
And they're
happens
done that.
when I'm being brave." Okay, that's the normal feelings of bravery, which, is kind of nauseous, and
Hmm.
now I know I can get through that.
Yes, recognizing that you can be brave and scared at the same time, but having the clarity to know what you're doing and
Yeah,
why, right?
yeah,
And kind of taking that's when you leap.
that's
So
right.
my last real question for you. I think, have a shared quote that we both love, and it's Mary Oliver. And she says, "Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life."
Ooh,
And Mary Oliver is just such a gem, and I think you are as well. So I want to preface the question with you shared with me that the thing you're most proud of is raising your daughters on your own, helping your mom through her end of life, starting and running your business, and then managing through all of the pandemic and the things aligned. With this quote in mind, you've done a lot with your wild and precious life. What lies ahead for you? Asking you this question today, what do you plan to do? What comes next for Linda?
That's such a great question. As I grow my business and scale my business, I want to step more into thought leadership. I really, that's what I help my entrepreneur clients with, is taking their idea and helping them form it into a clear offer, a marketing plan, goal setting,
The
monetizing,
whole thing.
taking it from start to finish. So taking my clients from idea to thought leadership.
Mhm.
And for me, I want to step more into that role myself as a thought leader. And for me, that looks like really just honoring who I am and really being, um, uh, and to me, that looks like being present, being grateful, still challenging myself. I know we all want comfort in our lives, right? But I know for me, I need a level of discomfort, a level in order to keep growing. And
Right.
that's what I look for. I look for what is the next thing that I want to try that is going to push me to the next level. And it always requires a different self-concept,
Yeah.
um, moving towards the person I want to become rather than the person who I have been. I like to I like to live future focused, and what delightful things are that I can create in the future. So for me, it's really stepping into creativity, more writing. I adore the written word.
Okay.
I also adore the spoken word. Both of them are equally interesting to me.
Mhm.
But I think, our whole conversation has been about social media and marketing, and we are writing. And I think for me, empowering women entrepreneurs to step into their power as writers. You are writing a
You are
great
the
deal.
author of your life.
You're
You
the
are the
author.
author of your
Yes.
life, right? And if we're not writing the story, somebody else is,
Somebody
right?
else is.
And telling us how to be small, how to be all the things. And I
Hashtag
love,
main character energy.
hey, I like that. Hashtag main character energy. And that we forget that, right? That we
Yeah.
are the main character of our life. And we think all the supporting actors should get all the accolades because who are we, to get the big trophy? But I think this conversation has been really enlightening in helping to demystify that. And for me as a reminder to my showing up is a service and a gift to others. They can take it or leave it, right?
Yeah.
Someone hands you a bouquet of flowers, you don't have to take it, but
Right.
you can,
You can.
and I so appreciate your perspective and your willingness to be vulnerable and to put your own self out there and walk the walk so that we can follow along, right? It's a lot easier when we're not doing this alone. And I can be like, all right, I saw Linda do this. Maybe I can try it. And while I don't want to live a life that I need that kind of affirmation and community thumbs up, right now it's where I am. I'm learning and I want to know where the boundaries and maybe there are no boundaries, but the game is played so I can figure out how I want to play it. And I'm grateful to have friends and mentors like you. So how can we find more Linda if someone wants to talk further about coaching or more about speaking? How can people get a hold of you?
My website's the best. It's just lindadrosdowech.com, and or social media. I'm Instagram, Facebook message. But yeah, go or just email me, Linda@lindadrosdowech.com is the easiest way. And I do love to speak, and I do love to coach. So please reach out. And just what you said about, watching each other as we grow, I think it gives us a sense of possibility. When we see somebody doing something that we never thought in a million years we could do, and then you see somebody do it, it opens up something, I think, that is just wonderful. So the more each of us takes that risk to be vulnerable and show themselves and be seen, heard, and take up space, the better for all of us.
Amen. I think we can just leave it at that, right? The more we are willing to show up and be heard and be seen, it's the better for all of us, because there is no one-way liberation. If I liberate myself and I feel whole, I'm not going to be taking from other people. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be pulling on their resources. So I loved this conversation, and I so appreciate you. I will link everything I can into the show notes. But before we go, if you could have a billboard, I love this question. I'm not sure if you're familiar. If you could have a billboard, not advertising a product, but a belief that would be seen by millions of people, what would you say to the world?
Belong to yourself.
I'm clapping. That's great. Belong to yourself. Write your own rules, create your own expectations, determine how many times you want to show up at the thing. Belong to yourself.
Belong to yourself. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank
Well,
you.
I
Great
can't think of a
question.
better way to close it out. To all those listening, thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to follow along, and wherever you are, please make it a great day. Thanks so much.
Kayla.
And that's a wrap on another episode of And All the Things. If you enjoyed today's show, please like and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you really liked it, please go ahead and rate it. Then think about who in your life might also need to hear it and any of the other episodes we have shared. Then share it with them. When you find something meaningful, something valuable, you've got to share it and pay it forward to those you care for. Thanks for joining us, and follow along on Instagram at MyJoyCoach to see more of me, your host, Michaela Burdyshaw. And as always, make it a great day.